out is not to take issue with his policy positions. I happen not to agree with them, but because I believe his characterological deficiencies are so great that they preclude his being president, and that whatever the smoke and mirrors that are created in the course of a campaign may make people believe. I lived with this man day and night for a year and a half, and I have no doubt that my assessment of his character is accurate. And there unfortunately isn't virtually anybody else who's had as close a relationship with Donald Trump who didn't sign a non-disclosure agreement and therefore isn't talking about him.
And to those sort of divided opinions, I want to read you a quote that Michael Moore, something he said very recently, you might have seen this in the news. He said, "Whether Trump means it or not is kind of irrelevant because he's saying the things to people who are hurting. And that's why every beaten down, nameless, forgotten working stiff who used to be part of what was called the middle class loves Trump. He is the human Molotov cocktail that they've been waiting for." Do you think this is an accurate portrayal?
Dead on. Listen, we need, as a society in the US, and given Brexit here and Marie Le Pen in France and nationalist movements all over the world, all over the Western world, we need to recognize that Trump didn't come out of nowhere. Trump came out of a deep discontent. And what was that discontent? I would argue that the primary reason for that discontent is the tremendous income inequality that has emerged. It's the dark side of capitalism. It's a whole group of people, like the ones Michael Moore described, who grew up believing that they were as entitled to the American dream as anybody else and had been used to working crappy jobs but getting paid reasonably well, having some version of that American dream, a nice car, a house, a certain amount of security. And then all of a sudden, the world gets filled with a small number of people like Donald Trump who control a vast percentage of the wealth, and they're out on their backsides. And the irony is that Trump ought to be their enemy, but the reality is that they have reason to be angry. And it's not a surprise to me that the most disenfranchised people in our society who are white, because Trump has been so virulently hating towards so many minority groups, but for white people who are disenfranchised, I get why they're for him. And a lot of the reason I'm speaking out, is in the hope that I can temper that anger with the recognition that this man doesn't care about them.
And why don't these disenfranchised white people feel represented by the Democratic Party?
Why aren't they?
Yeah.
Because Democrats and Republicans are in large measure equal opportunity offenders when it comes to the income disparity and to the over-embrace of a free market. Unfortunately, you look at the choice the Clintons made after they came out of office, and it was to run up their advantage. And that itself is a source of enormous anger in people. Why they're not angry at Trump for bringing in workers from overseas and having his products made in other countries is a mystery to me. It's not a complete mystery. The one other factor I would say that makes sense to me is Trump is not a traditional politician. So they are saying to themselves, and maybe some folks in this room are saying to themselves, he could be a savior. I'm desperate for a savior. He could be a savior. And I'm going to throw caution to the wind, because at this point, almost everyone understands that this is a man with some pretty serious limitations. But it's a measure of the anger that it's overcome by the hope.
So let's talk about those limitations with regard to the campaign. And for many people, the line between the campaign's strategy and its buffoonery is quite blurred. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, how contrived is the campaign? Are the blunders planned? Are the scandals relished? Or is this literally just screw up after screw up?
It is literally screw up after screw up. I mean, there is no planning in the sense that Trump runs the store. Make no mistake, The reason you see tweets from him that are self-immolating and crazy is because nobody controls him. He does what he wants to do. And there's not some aide standing next to his bed at 4 a.m. when he gets the impulse to send out a tweet. The campaign is a almost perfect reflection of the man.